Two nations, one border, now an economic battleground. As Mark Carney's climate-driven third way collides with Trump's tariff onslaught, Canada's economic sovereignty faces its fiercest test. Aluminum tariffs cripple Ontario's auto sector. Alberta's energy exports brace for Trump's fossil fuel loyalty. Carney vows defiance, diversifying trade with Europe and Asia, yet 75% of Canadian exports still flow south. Can strategic alliances and WTO appeal counter U.S. coercion, or will $45 billion in trade and a continent's stability vanish in a tariff war? Lives stalled at borders, industries trembling, the stakes transcend economics. I'm Henny Saif, and this is Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
According to Time, Mark Carney, a political newcomer, is set to become Canada's 24th Prime Minister, a daunting challenge amid escalating tensions with the US under Donald Trump. Carney, with an impressive career in finance and crisis management, notably at the Bank of England, was chosen by the Liberal Party despite his lack of political experience, securing an overwhelming mandate. His leadership comes at a critical time, with Trump's trade threats and tariffs jeopardizing Canada's economy. The Liberal Party hopes Carney's expertise will help win over voters, especially as public trust in his leadership outpaces that of his populist rival, Pierre Poilievre. However, Carney faces significant hurdles, with exhaustion with Liberal rule to challenges on climate and resource policies. While his experience is an asset, his political inexperience and technocratic style may make it difficult to appeal to voters seeking change. The New York Times has reported that Mark Carney, Canada's incoming Prime Minister, faces a pivotal challenge, balancing negotiations with Donald Trump while campaigning against him. Having steered Canada through economic crises as central banker, Carney now seeks to convince voters he can handle the growing tensions with the U.S. over tariffs and sovereignty. Carney's leadership marks a dramatic shift from Justin Trudeau's era, with his expert handling of global crises making him a promising figure. Despite this, he must navigate a tough election, with polls showing a close race against Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. Amid Trump's threats, Carney plans to retaliate with tariffs and negotiate fair trade, hoping to protect Canada's economy and sovereignty while fostering a pragmatic relationship with the U.S. As Carney's climate-driven vision collides with Trump's tariff storm, Canada faces a defining test. The sovereignty amid $45 billion of trade stakes, or bend to America's economic might. Lives, livelihoods, and alliances hang in the balance.
Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney, a former Bank of England governor, champions a third-way economic strategy that blends climate-conscious trade and multilateralism. His approach contrasts sharply with Donald Trump's revived America First tariffs, which target Canadian aluminum, steel, and EVs.
The Americans want our resources, our water, our land, our country.
While Carney advocates for fair trade, Trump's tariffs aim to shield U.S. industries, risking $45 billion in annual bilateral trade. U.S. tariffs threaten Ontario's auto sector, 15% of Canada's GDP, and Alberta's energy exports. Canadian aluminum, vital for U.S. automakers, faces 10% duties, disrupting supply chains. Conversely, U.S. auto workers in Michigan protest Canadian imports, fearing job losses. Carney's climate-focused policies, including green subsidies, risk clashing with Trump's fossil fuel advocacy, further straining ties. Carney rejects subservience to the U.S., vowing to diversify trade through EU and Indo-Pacific partnerships. Yet Canada relies on the U.S. for 75% of its exports. Trump's demands to renegotiate USMCA and block Canadian hydro exports to Maine highlight coercive diplomacy. Carney's team cites past USMCA wins, for example dairy disputes, as templates for resistance. While Carney's quiet diplomacy avoids public sparring, Trump's tariffs may force Canada into retaliatory measures, risking a 1980s-style trade war. However, shared geopolitical interests such as China's rise and Arctic security could incentivize. Truck drivers hauling parts between Ontario and Michigan now face 6-hour delay due to tariff inspections. Every delay costs $500, echoing the human toll of geopolitical brinkmanship. Canada's resilience in past disputes, softwood lumber, Keystone XL, suggests Carney may leverage allies in the U.S. Congress and legal WTO channels, yet Trump's unpredictability demands unprecedented strategic agility.
And to provide more analysis on the most recent updates concerning the economic dynamics of the Canadian-US relations under Canada's new Prime Minister and the evolving policies of the Trump administration, we're joined now from Cairo by Dr. Ashraf Singer, the international political analyst, and Dr. Amani Suleiman, the director of the Mediterranean Studies Institute. Welcome to Think Tank. Dr. Singer, how might Trump's tariffs on Canadian aluminum reshape North American geopolitical alliances amid China's economic rise?
Definitely, the Trump strategy, on imposing, tariffs on Canadian, imports to United States, it's making, Canada very nervous and gonna to reshape, the North Atlantic, relationship, particularly Canada and United States. That type of conflict, on imports and exports, really move these countries, both of them, in a very different, perspective or different strategy. Europe is watching what is going on between Canada and United States. So we understand that Canada and Mexico, for example, they import 70% of what the Americans really need for their life, so basically expecting, the prices in the United States will raise significantly, but fortunately Trump postpone, that kind of tariffs till next month. And it seems to me with the new prime ministers, there is like a new strategy trying, to create the mix between the security concerns with the trade concerns. And, with the Trudeau and Biden, they had agreed, that to keep that link between the security and trade mutually or related, integrated, to keep both two nations, rise together rather than fight. It seems to me like Trump is really shaking the status quo every time he did repeat that Canada should be the 51st state of the United States, and this makes the new prime minister very nervous, as he said in his last statement, that Canada will stay sovereign country. So we need really to solve the political issues before to talk about, before talking about the economic issues or trade issues. It seems to me like there is a huge conflict in their minds, either Trump and the new prime minister, they need really to solve that problem first.
Yes. Dr. Suleiman, now, as Canada diversifies trade with the European Union and Indo-Pacific, how might Mediterranean energy corridors offset the U.S. pressure on Alberta's exports?
Well, in the past 10 years, Europe tried to compensate its lack or its shortage in production of natural gas and other energy sources through establishing what is called the Mediterranean corridors, which is good, not bad actually, infrastructure for of ports, of pipelines, and other infrastructure needed for different operations, especially needed for natural gas. We have seen the establishment of the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum in Cairo in 2018, where several European countries in the EU joined Egypt and other countries from Southern Mediterranean and Eastern Mediterranean for this purpose. So perhaps Canada would think of diversification of exports and to lessen its dependence on the demand of the US, which would put less tension between the two countries. The Canadian media is using rhetoric as if Canada was betrayed by the US. They have depended on the US for their exports for a very long time. It's easier logistically, politically, on many levels. However, Americans now are trying to put, or Trump in particular is trying to put more tariffs and more protectionist measures on different sectors of the Canadian economy, especially the exports of energy. So perhaps opening these markets in Europe either as a importers or as transit destination to the Canadian gas to reach new destinations. This would be beneficial to Canada. And it would also be very beneficial to Europe, which is trying now to lessen its dependence on Russia, especially after the Ukrainian war. So it would be a win-win situation for both the EU countries and Canada to perhaps establish this new connection and start to accept exports from Canada through Europe or to Europe.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Singer, could Carney's third way economics neutralize Trump's America First strategy without destabilizing NATO partnerships?
Wow, this is very, very challenging, because what is Trump is calling now that United States really should really leave NATO. And this is really scary for Canada and for other in Europe. So Trump's strategy now, it seems to me like it's very vague. No one can really understand Trump, mindset in terms of trade and in terms of keeping NATO strong. I understood in the past in terms of that Trump was trying to push the European countries and Canada to increase their military budget or their military burden to reach 2%, and he did ask last month to reach 5%. This type of a challenge, but it seems to me like Carney in his approach, as he spent some of his life working time of his life working for banking policies, so probably he can really create what say a ground where he can really reach Trump mind. Trump believes that is he the best person all over the world in terms of making deal, either by threatening or scaring other partners, and let that guys just answer what he really asked for. I think or I believe that Canada and United States can really find a common grounds in their future. I don't see Canada need really to threats United States. by retaliating for what Trump really was trying, in terms of the auto industry, that Canada can really lose at least, $5 billion, and this is not really a small amount. But Canada understand that is the long-term economic relationship with the United States very important, economic stability, and try to understand that, increase that concept or protectionism, the idea that really control the United States foreign policy will not work, not with Canada or with Europe. United States should really stay in NATO, keep, improving, the trade relationship with their partners, particularly Mexico and Canada. This is really essential for global security, not really open like a global competition with your alliance rather than with your advisor.
Yes. Well, Dr. Suleiman, what role could the Mediterranean allies play in mediating Canada-US disputes, given the shared stakes in global energy markets?
Well, there is always the traditional way of diplomacy, starting talks, dialogues between the two countries regarding their economic mutual interests, and putting some sanity to the conversation, because it has been, last year has been a year of election in the US. This year is a year of elections in Canada. Everyone is using a very harsh language, and all the time there are accusations of undermining the other parties' interests. So Europe can mediate through traditional diplomacy, perhaps, but there are also practical and economical ways that the Canadians and the Americans can make use of it. If we think of perhaps investing in the infrastructure of the Mediterranean corridors of natural gas and the energy lines through Europe. This could be not just good for Canadian exports, but a new way for the Americans perhaps to invest in the infrastructure related to energy sources in the Mediterranean. So Europe could offer this on the table as a new way for everybody to win, for the Canadians to export their energy sources, and for the Americans to also invest in the infrastructure in Europe that really needs more funds to be better and to be up to the complications of digging off the, especially the Mediterranean reservoirs and other complications that come with the Mediterranean natural gas. So perhaps they could play both cards, diplomacy and perhaps some economic pressure through investments. We can call them also incentives if the Europeans could put them in a convincing form.
Yes. Well, Dr. Singer, you've mentioned the losses that the car industry is facing now, with Ontario's auto sector facing $5 billion in tariff-related losses. Do you think Carney's green subsidies could offset Trump's protectionist blitzkrieg?
This is a very challenging for Trump, because Trump doesn't believe in, climate change or protecting, the global warming. You need really to fight the global warming. I'm sorry. So it seems to me like, the Carney will impose, that strategy of green subsidizes as a new path, for a new policies or a new politics, in Canada, or part of the Canadian foreign policy. But it seems to me like that policies, in promoting, green subsidies will, of course, improve, the greener economy by encouraging, that type of investment, particularly in clean energy. But keep in your mind that electric vehicles, now Tesla, is a dominant in the United States, and that kind of, I would say, conflict of interest pretty clear now that Elon Musk has a role to play in United States politics, either in foreign policy or domestic policy. So internally, there is like a huge critiques towards Elon Musk. But Elon Musk clearly that he really interested to watch China and Canada and Europe, particularly for Tesla or for electric vehicle. So green technologies is very important for Canada, for Ontario, which the new Prime Minister needs really to make Canada or Ontario as a hub for the Canadian auto industry. So this is a new challenge is really facing United States, or a new war, between United States and Canada, particularly both of them now they have like different approach about the auto industry. So Trump needs really to keep everything in America and try to remove every challenger that can really affect United States investment. But the new Prime Minister needs really to attract investment in green innovations, and this is really important for Canada. Create a global market positions where Canada can really apply or attract that number of investments can really come to land in Canada that can really improve that trade volume over time with other countries like China, policy. That type of long-term economic, strategy can really help Canada a lot. Particularly, Canada is not really a big economy compared to China or the United States, and this is why Canada is pretty nervous from that Trump policies against Canada, because Canada does need, to open the borders, increase the free trade, not really challenging, their economy by imposing, the tariffs or transition cost. This can really open a global competitions between Canada and United States, and this is not really help United States and Canada for long-term relationship. Particularly, both of them, they are neighboring each other.
Yes.
And as I mentioned before, they have interest in security objects as they have long border.
Yes. Dr. Suleiman, how might WTO appeals and U.S. congressional lobbying mitigate Canada's 75% export reliance on a hostile trade partner?
Well, first of all, we have to remember how Donald Trump perceived the WTO. In his first term, he withdrew arbitrators from the appellate body just to make it unable to issue verdicts. And he always accused the WTO of being the reason why China could put, in his view, such huge pressure on the American economy and different American industries. He doesn't trust it, he doesn't respect it, and he openly criticized the WTO several times. So, of course, Canada can file an appeal to the WTO against the American trade barriers, against the tariffs and all this. It's viable. They can do this. But even if a verdict was in their favor, I doubt that Trump would conform to it or really follow it or respect it by any means. He doesn't recognize the functions of the WTO itself, and he sort of considers it an enemy to the American economy. So yeah, the Canadian could do this, but the question is, can the verdict, if ever issued, be implemented or not? This is something that we can say that it will not happen. On the other hand, congressional lobbying looks more feasible. On two levels. If we're talking politics, the long-standing friendship between the Canadian and the American people, these two countries share the longest undefended borders in the world. And it's assumed that between 400,000 to 500,000 American and Canadian are crossing the borders every day for work and tourism and other issues. So politics and long-time historical relationship could be used as a congressional lobbying card, as well as economical pressure. We can, again, as Dr. Singer said, we can remind both parties of what they have to lose. As I was saying, Canada could think of exporting its natural gas to Europe, but think about the logistics, think about the cost, and think about the geopolitical hardship. It's not that easy forming these relationships for more than 200 years and now trying to break them down. So I think congressional lobbying, whether political or economical, would be very pragmatic and think of the mutual interests of the two people. And this is more feasible than the WTO track.
Definitely. Dr. Ameni Suleiman, Director of the Mediterranean Studies Institute, and Dr. Ashraf Singh, the International Political Analyst, thank you very much for being with us on the show. Now, as tariffs harden, borders and climate reshapes alliances, Canada's duel with Trump tests more than trade. It defines sovereignty's price in a fractured world. What's the next move? A continent holds its breath. Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.